we are going to see the properties of indifference curve. I have already uploaded the notes of indifference curve. What is an indifference curve? What is an indifference map? Its graph. What are the assumptions? Next is properties. We will see it one by one. First one is indifference curve is downward sloping. Why is it downward sloping? You can see 5 bundles here, 5 combinations here, A, B, C, D, E. In these combinations you can see bundles of good X and Y. These bundles, the combinations show inverse relation. When the consumption of X commodity increases, the consumption of Y commodity decreases. So inverse relation. And when we mark it on a graph, we will get a downward sloping curve. Next property is, why is indifference curve convex to the origin? Why is it convex to the origin? Because of diminishing MRS. This concept I have already explained in the previous class. Because of diminishing MRS, the indifference curve is convex to the origin. It is not concave, it is convex. The reason, MRS is the slope of the indifference curve. MRS is equal to delta Y by delta X. What is delta Y? The quantity of the commodity sacrificed. The ratio between the quantity of the commodity sacrificed and quantity of the commodity gained gives us MRS, marginal rate of substitution. So MRS, diminishing MRS is the slope of the indifference curve. So MRS is the slope of the indifference curve. Why is it so? In order to increase the consumption of good X, the consumption of good Y is sacrificed. In the first level, the sacrifice is more, 4 units sacrificed. Next you can see only 3 units sacrificed, then only 2, then 1. So 12 to 8, 4, 8 to 5, 3, 5 to 3, 2, 3 to 2, 1. So the first level, good Y is sacrificed in larger units in order to consume 1 unit of good X. So, and when good X, its consumption increases, the marginal utility derived from that commodity goes on decreasing. So the consumer decides that there is no need to sacrifice this much of good Y because the satisfaction deriving from good X, it goes on decreasing. Then he reduces the sacrifice. Reduces the sacrifice. Goes on reducing. The consumption of good Y goes on reducing, but not in larger quantity as it was happening in the beginning. From 4 units of sacrifice, it decreases to 3. 3 to 2, 2 to 1. The ratio between this quantity of the commodity sacrificed and quantity of the commodity gained gives us MRS, and that is the slope of the indifference curve. We will see how is it calculated and also the graphical presentation. How MRS determines the slope of the indifference curve. So how is MRS calculated here? If it is delta Y by delta X, this already I have given in the notes. MRS is equal to delta Y by delta X. That is the ratio between, or we will write this way, delta Y is to delta X. So the first level we cannot calculate. First bundle is A, the combination A, 112. Before that, what was the preference of the consumer? We don't know according to the given data. So first level we can't calculate the MRS. Then next level 12 to 8. So 4Y is to, what is the consumption of good X? 1X. Next from 8 to 5, 3 units sacrificed. 3y is to 1 more unit of good x. Next, how many units sacrificed? 2y is to 1x. Then 1y is to 1x. You can see MRS is decreasing. 4y is to 1x, 3y is to 1x, 2y is to 1x, 1y is to 1x. And how will we mark it? It's approximate. Kindly take the proper measurement. So, first level 4 units sacrificed. Delta y is sacrificed in order to increase the consumption from 1 to 2. Delta x. Okay. Next, from 8 units, 5 units of y decreases to 3 units. This is delta y. In order to increase the consumption from 2 to 3. This way, so delta y 12 to 8. In order to increase one more unit of good x, 1 to 2, then 8 to 5. Delta y, change in the consumption of y from 8 to 5. In order to increase the consumption from 2 to 3. This way it goes on. Next combination. See how much is the reduction? 5 to 3. Delta y, in order to increase the consumption from 3 to 4. Then from 3 to, how much is the reduction? Delta y is only 1 unit is sacrificed in order to increase the consumption, delta x. So this way, the slope of the indifference curve is determined with the diminishing MRS. So next we are going to discuss the third property. Higher the indifference curve, higher is the level of satisfaction. You can see here 3 indifference curves. Indifference curve 1, 2, 3. A consumer will prefer more of both the goods or more of one good and not less of the other. His monotonic preferences are such a way that he will prefer more of both commodities given. Okay, so here you can see 3 combinations P, Q, R. Bundle P contains 1 and 8. Good X 1, good Y 8 units. Bundle Q contains 2 units of X and 10 units of Y. Bundle R contains 3 units of X and 12 units of Y. So these 3 bundles are on 3 different indifference curves. This one P on IC 1, indifference curve 1, Q on IC curve 2 and R on IC curve 3. Which is the highest indifference curve here? Indifference curve 3, which contains more of both the goods, C 3 and 12. So as this bundle, as this curve contains more of both the goods, consumer will prefer it. So I have shown only one example, one bundle. All the bundles on IC3 will be higher in quantity compared to indifference curve 1 and 2. So higher the indifference curve, higher is the level of satisfaction or utility to the consumer. Next property is that 2 indifference curves do not intersect with each other. You can see here 2 indifference curves, indifference curve 1 and 2. and there are three bundles A, B, C. Bundle A lies on both the curves. I see 1 and 2. What is an indifference curve? The assumption is that all the bundles on the same indifference curve give the consumer equal level of satisfaction. If A lies on both the curves, which are the other bundles on both the curves? B lies on IC2, C on IC1. If all the bundles on an indifference curve give the same level of satisfaction, A and B should give the consumer same level of satisfaction, so also A and C. If A and B give the same level of satisfaction and A and C derive the same level of satisfaction, then B and C also should derive the same level of satisfaction. This is wrong because though B and C contains equal amount of good X, B contains more of good Y. It will be preferred by the consumer. Okay. So according to this example, C contains only 5 units of Y. B and C contains 6 units of X. But C contains only 5 units of Y, but B contains 7 units of Y. According to monotonic preferences, the consumer will prefer more of both the goods or more of a good and not less of the other. So consumer will prefer B. So we cannot say that all the bundles will give the same level of satisfaction. So indifference curve theory will be wrong. So two indifference curves do not intersect with each other. Different levels of indifference curve give different levels of satisfaction. Lower indifference curve give lower level of satisfaction. Higher indifference curve will give higher level of satisfaction, and they don't intersect with each other.